WB2TWIGS. Yo, we've been talking about who is God for a good, 17, 18 videos now. I think altogether it's a good 2 hours and some change. So it's been quite an in-depth conversation. So hopefully you've learned something from it. I know I have. But we're getting to our last attribute, and then we're gonna wrap this thing up in the last video of this series. So let's get into it. God is self-existent, meaning that he is the causeless cause. He needed nothing to initiate his existence, and he needs nothing to sustain his existence. He is the very epitome of what it means to be eternal, to be infinite, to have no beginning, to have no end. He is the epitome of existence. Everything that exists around us exists because he exists. And if he did not exist, then nothing would. In fact, his very name bears this same notion. The Tetragrammaton, which is the 4 Hebrew letters, the Yod, He, Vav, He, that make up the name of the Lord, commonly pronounced as Yahweh, or in the Hebrew, it's completely replaced with the word Adonai, which simply means my Lord. Adon means Lord, and then the protakio at the end is a pronominal suffix, first common singular, which will translate to my, so my Lord. And also can be pronounced as Yehovah, which is pretty much the consonants of the Tetragrammaton with the vowels of Adonai mixed together to make Yehovah, or Jehovah. Even though there isn't really a J in Hebrew, but that's besides the point. So I'll refer to the Tetragrammaton as Adonai. But the point I'm trying to make is that the word itself stems from the Hebrew word Haya, which means to be or to exist. And so the very name of God literally means the existent one, the one who exists. And what I find interesting about the name Adonai is the fact that it's a personal covenant name given to us, to humans, right? The angels don't refer to God as Adonai because they don't struggle with this idea of, does God exist, right? They know he exists. But yet, we as humans, we do struggle with this idea of existence. Does God exist? And so God, in his very name, sought to assure us that I understand that you'll have doubts, I understand that you'll have questions, but I am, right? That's what it means, right? When God says, I am, when Jesus said that, I am, he was saying that I exist. I am the existent one. Now, of course, we can't talk about God's existence without there being that age-old debate of, well, does God really exist, and how can we prove that? But personally, I don't really believe that that sort of debate really even matters, because at the end of the day, the proof or evidence that God exists isn't really what's important. For example, I remember I used to intern at this medical regional center, and I would go to work and I would see doctors and nurses outside smoking. And I'm just like, you have all this medical research, all this proof, all this evidence available to you. You have a medical degree. You know what's going to go on with your body if you smoke. But yet, here you are, doing it anyway. The very people who's probably telling other people to not smoke because it's harmful to their bodies are the very ones who are here smoking. Despite the proof, despite the evidence, they're still doing what they know is wrong. And so I think the same thing will happen even if there was sufficient proof and evidence that God truly does exist, there would still be people who would choose to live contrary to that fact, even though they know what's wrong. So the real question is not so much, well, does God exist and how can we prove it? I think the real question is, does it even matter? Are we actually going to live by the conviction of God's existence? Because if we aren't, then knowing or having this proof and evidence is simply just going to be head knowledge that's really not going to impact or change our lives at all. So the question that I have is, if you had sufficient proof that God exists, how would you live your life differently? Or would you actually live your life any differently? Think on these things.